You're listening to P&P Pals Tabletop Role-playing Radio Theatre. Greetings, I'm Oddette. I've been P&P Pals Dungeon Master for just over a year now. Realizing that has made me reflect on the campaign so far. Mostly, I've been marveling at how different it's felt from every other game I've run before. The characters and subject matter are a bit more subdued than our usual fare, and the pace is much slower, but the element that feels most different is DMing for a group of one. And that would be today's topic, in a segment I'm calling Special Geas, because we all thought it was pronounced Geas, and I want to use what Google says is the correct pronunciation. Rosma is my bestest friend in the whole wide world. When one of us has to travel, the other usually tags along. More often than not, we end up talking about D&D. I suppose something about being crammed in a car or plane inspires a desire for a fantastic escape. In the most dire of boring situations, like interstate traffic jams or DMV visits, we'll usually end up in a one-off adventure, only building out the details of player characters as new traits and numbers are needed.
Hey, what do you think's causing the weird clouds above that cemetery? The one off on the left.
Roll an intelligence nature check.
What are my stats? I got a die roller. Do you want me to...
You should just use an array.
Arrays are no fun. I'll just do intelligence for now. Fate will decide... Hold on. That I am 1 point smarter than a horse. And I got a 6 on the check. And you know what? I've decided this character isn't even proficient in nature. That makes more sense anyway. You know, what with the 4 on the check? I'm doing my mental maths correctly.
Good job. You think the clouds above the gloomy cemetery look like ice cream. You like ice cream.
I'll make a note of that.
Before we started, I expected our play-by-post to run with a similar fluidity. Less like writing prose and more like texting. However, we quickly settled into a kind of writing that gives us time to think, then drill down on the details that would be overlooked in our usual games. Speaking of our usual games, I have DM'd for and played in a bunch of campaigns, mostly with close friends, but also some organized play. Playing in person, over voice chat, with friends or strangers, it doesn't matter where or who, an interesting group dynamic always develops. When I start dropping my breadcrumbs, trying to get a story moving along, I can count on these groups to have a variety of perspectives. If one party member misses my intention, another usually picks it up. If everyone misses what I'm putting down, whatever they collectively come up with tends to be so interesting or bizarre that I'm fine covertly running with that instead. I mean, it's fucking D&D, and I'm looking for something awesome to happen. 3 or more brains tripping over each other to misinterpret a clue can lead to some truly awesome nonsense. This is in sharp contrast with P&P Pals. With just one player, everything I write is designed to be very personal, or quickly becomes personal. I feel like I'm scrying the secrets of his bird brain.
Hey now.
And his bear brain.
Aw, thanks, man.
I'm used to delivering information that's intended to be filtered by several people, designed for an approximate average of their experiences and interests. Messing with a group as a whole feels a lot less personal and antagonistic than designing a situation that specifically tests one person. As an example, Rosma, I'm sorry about the anti-magic gate. I had to put you and Anise through that in the name of mystery and adventure.
Yeah? Did you? Then why doesn't anything else made out of blue stone on this mountain take my spells away, huh? What did I learn?
You learned that you're not playing The Legend of Zelda, and that not everything you perceive to be mechanically relevant is going to build towards some crucial dungeon-delving solution. Sometimes stuff just exists in this world because someone else has traveled it, and you happen upon what's left over.
That's what I should have learned there. That sounds like a pretty important lesson.
It is.
Did you just make it up?
Maybe. That's the mystery. Another funny thing that has happened without a group of people playing is that conflict within the core of the party is basically non-existent, unless I go out of my way to start shit. A long-term goal of the campaign is presenting the party with a nation-scale conflict. Each of the characters agreeing on how to proceed should be very important. There is a danger, I think, in Retribution and Denise having the same logical core that Rosma does. It's difficult to imagine something that they won't manage to approach rationally. Bunch of nerds. But so help me, I've got to try. I feel like on paper they're distinct characters. In trying to maintain that distinction, Rosma sometimes plays them more like caricatures of themselves to show off differences. It doesn't happen often, but I think that's mostly thanks to him remembering that today's session is tomorrow's script. You know, I miss the delectable infighting that happens naturally when two or more players try to work together on something interesting. Writing scenes in general is a bit harder for a solo player. If I can set a scene pretty well with a normal party, the impression is typically amplified across the group as each person questions it, forcing me to concoct little wrinkles that I hadn't envisioned before they asked. Without a bunch of varied perspectives to count on, I have to spend much more time trying to completely imagine things myself. That extra imagination time has a big impact on more than just the environment. This style of play has also been great for fleshing out non-player characters. I can get into much more detail because I only have one audience member, and he actually cares about this fluff and stuff. I think the next time I play in a campaign, I'll use a combination of play-by-post and our road trip method to build my character. I would probably play part of their first level back and forth with Rosma to sort of find out who they are, and then just take them with me to whatever campaign they're intended for. This is getting into a completely different topic, but it's fun figuring out new characters in a semi-random way, and I think that determining character traits on the fly can provide detail that would usually get glossed over. Maybe that should get its own segment? Back on track. This may have come off as complaining so far, but all these aspects together actually end up making this campaign feel more cooperative than they usually do. Generally, I find it difficult to manage interesting character arcs for everyone at the table, and paying attention to several players leaves me skimming the surface. It's much easier talking to just Rosma about his character's backstories and motivations, and I can afford to be much more involved and focused. I have to put in more detail, but it's easier to keep the campaign interesting for all your players when all means one. Moving the story forward with just the two of us is also much more natural. There is a clear call and response because we play by post. With some groups, it's possible to get into a spot where all your players want to proceed, but no one wants to go first. You watch them get into a politeness loop, and before you know it, you have to look up a monster to herd them forward. It's the same result when a fun, delicious conflict turns into a paralyzing, sour one. With only one player, it's obvious who has to drive the action on that side of the table. We only have one another to rely upon to advance the narrative, and that amplifies the collaborative storytelling component of the game. When you're the DM for a party of 4, the responsibility to add to the environment is spread across the group, and sometimes certain input can feel dilute. With just one player, you team up to push the adventure forward out of necessity. Thinking about it, 2-person campaigns might be a good way to introduce socially anxious people to the game. Shy people might struggle to find their footing when playing in a group, so playing back and forth with just a DM might be a way to introduce the rules and give them space to think about their character. On the other side of things, it also seems great for your loudest, most overbearing friends, the near fanatics with too many spare characters.
What are you talking about?
I
don't know anybody like that.
That's all for today's special Gesh. My apologies for the scattershot nature of this segment, but I'm working with a year's worth of stray thoughts here. There's only so much connective tissue to go around. If you have any questions, find our social media below, or leave a comment. The music for our intro was composed by Walker Williams. We have links to him and his work in the description. The show is produced by Precarious at best, and heard by you. See you around, curious traveler.